Kippers for breakfast, Michael? Tis it the 1 year anniversary of COVID already?
"'Tis!" replied Michael. "Yes, it absolutely is, Luke. It's been, it's obviously not been a 1 year anniversary since COVID-19, because the 19 stands for 2019, but it is the 1 year anniversary of when it started to seriously impact white Westerners, so might as well be."
Yeah, well, actually, I think the UK locked down on the 23rd of March 2020, so that is the 1 year anniversary where it got really serious for us in our country, and of course around the same time in the United States and across the Western world. Of course, that's when COVID became a serious problem, and of course, yes, it did affect China beforehand. I remember before March 2020 reading about what's going down in Wuhan in February, not knowing the hell that would be unleashed when it rocked up in the UK. But yeah, so basically, Michael, since it has been a year since our first lockdown in the UK, I think it's a good opportunity to just reflect on the year that has basically been lost to COVID. And I think a good place to start is with our first memories of COVID. For me, when coronavirus, I think, really hit home as, this was going to be a real problem, was when the NBA season was cancelled. And I believe that was on Wednesday, March the 11th. And that was actually the same day. Again, I don't know if anybody listening will remember that Liverpool got knocked out of the Champions League, being defeated 3-2 by Atletico Madrid at a game at Anfield. And that game was quite infamous because, of course, a load of Spanish fans came over and were allowed to, be in Liverpool's ground. And of course, Spain had COVID cases that were worse than the UK at that point, and that may have been, a cause for, in the northwest area of the UK, a lot of COVID cases. And yeah, basically later that day, then the NBA was cancelled for the rest of the season until it restarted back in the summer. So yeah, that to me, the 11th of March was the day where it hit home. Where, this was going to be a problem. You went from that life is back to normal, Atletico knocking Liverpool out of the Champions League, what a lovely day. Anyway, for me, that was till, one of my favourite sport has been cancelled and it isn't going to go ahead. What was the case for you, Michael?
Well, it's difficult for me because I think I've remained naively optimistic throughout the whole thing. I remember I was speaking to somebody who was looking forward to going on holiday in May, and obviously this would have been around March or February. And I was saying to them, well, let's suppose there is a lockdown. It probably just means you'll have to go on holiday in June or something. So really, it's just an extra month. I genuinely remember saying that. And I think ever since then, I have just been jinxing the whole thing and just being like, well, it'll probably be over by XYZ time. So to be honest, I would like to say that it's never really fully hit home. And I never could have predicted back in, March or February that it would last this long. But obviously for me, if there was a moment where I did realize it was going to be serious, it would probably be when when my university studies became fully onto Zoom, because I was of course doing my master's at the time. And obviously when that happened, I certainly realized that things were getting a bit more serious. But again, I was still naive in terms of just how long it would last, and I would have never predicted myself being here a year ago.
Yeah, Michael, I think what we need to get into today in this video, while reflecting on the 1 year anniversary of COVID, is essentially what happened 1 year ago with the response from the UK government and the United States government to coronavirus. And of course, I think we've covered the Conservative government's response in recent times, but back 1 year ago, they failed absolutely spectacularly. If you don't mind me saying, the lockdown that they imposed was too late. Decisions were made by the government that were frankly absurd. Do you remember herd immunity, Michael? Those two famous words, herd immunity.
Oh, yes, I do remember that. And the UK was the only country who thought they'd worked out the secret trick. Because I remember the way conservative politicians were talking about it was they were like, oh, these other people, their lockdowns. Haven't they ever heard of herd immunity? That will fix everything. Oh dear.
Yes, and there has been some historical revisionism on that. The UK never really went for herd immunity. But I'm going to play this clip from Sir Patrick Valiant, the Chief Government Scientific Advisor, from the 13th of March 2020, to show that, yes, in fact, herd immunity was a policy of the government.
To try and reduce the peak, broaden the peak, not to suppress it completely, also because most people, the vast majority of people, get a mild illness, to build up some degree of herd immunity as well, so that more people are immune to this disease and we reduce the transmission. At the same time, we protect those who are most vulnerable from it. Those are the key things we need to do.
Yeah. So, wow, that's, that pretty much confirms it. And yeah, obviously, I'm not surprised it's one of those issues where there's going to be revisionism, but of course, yes, I very much remember herd immunity being the idea that was being thrown around a lot by the government, again, like it was some kind of secret scheme that was going to get the UK through it unscathed.
But the question is, was our media there to hold the government's feet to the fire, considering how differently we were acting compared to the rest of the world? And as you can tell from this tweet up in your screen, the answer is no. I absolutely love this tweet. So Paul Brand from ITV, this again was on the 13th of March 2020, tweeted, Labour are calling on the government to publish their scientific advice so that the public can have confidence in the UK's approach, as Britain increasingly becomes an outlier in terms of their COVID response. And of course, this, is a reasonable thing to do. And it turns out this was, by the way, Labour under Jeremy Corbyn. You can tell why it's the right thing to do, because this was when Corbyn was leader. It was a bit weird how we were the only country doing it this way, pursuing a policy of herd immunity. And Jennifer Williams of the Manchester Evening News replied, presumably so more people with humanities degrees can form expert opinions on epidemiology, more expert than, say, a group of senior professors of epidemiology. And Aisha Hazakira, who of course was a member of Ed Miliband's team back when he was Labour leader, just a pure British centrist brain, if there ever was one, replies, yep, I really need some hipster analysis to reassure me. Just an iconic tweet there. And I think nothing sums up UK politics more than the UK media, not even like right-wing UK media, just like sensible centrist UK media, attacking Jeremy Corbyn's Labour for trying to hold the government to account, when clearly there was very obvious signs that the government was going in an awful and wrong direction concerning, a pandemic. So we love that tweet, don't we, Michael?
No, and it kind of just shows, like, I guess, the elitism and the fact that they're like, well, these people who are on the government side are experts, so therefore anybody who possibly disagrees with them must be people who are just, rejecting the testimony of experts, because, obviously experts can never be wrong about things, even if they're in, on the government's payroll, effectively.
Yeah, look, I think it was fairly obvious that, considering the rest of the world, they obviously were also listening to scientists. Well, why were every other single scientist in every other country saying something differently to the UK's ones? Maybe the government was deliberately trying to find scientific advice that they liked, so they didn't have to shut down the economy and lock down the UK. And on that note of the media just being completely ridiculous when COVID first hit the UK, we have this lovely little conversation from Dan Hodges, a journalist at the Daily Mail, who on the 11th of March tweeted, no one knows how coronavirus is going to play out. But one thing I do know, there are some people on here who will not be happy till the UK has been turned into a pandemic-ravaged wasteland just to prove a political point. Basically, there were people, who were very scared that, the government doesn't seem to be reacting well to this, and he was like, no, you idiots, you're just trying to undermine the Conservative government, that's all you're trying to do. And of course, that proved to be hilariously wrong. He receives a reply from Ryan Bourne. Dan, again, one of your tweets on this earlier is misleading. A 22% daily increase in cases would make the UK caseload similar to Italy in just over 2 weeks, because the base number is higher each day. Please stop encouraging complacency. Yes, exactly right. Stop encouraging complacency when there's a pandemic going on. Dan Hodges replies, but the prediction, where Italy in 2 weeks, was made several days ago. Peter Moore, yes, and a few days ago, Italy was still roughly 2 weeks ahead of us. I'm not quite sure what you're not getting here. On Friday, Italy had 3,800 cases. Now it has over 10,000. And Hodges replies, several days ago, we were being told we're Italy in 2 weeks. Several days on, we're being told we are Italy in just over 2 weeks. This is I love this tweet thread because it's hilarious. Hodges not understanding that yes, we are always 2 weeks behind Italy. The point is that we can see what is happening with Italy, and if things are getting worse over there, that means things are also going to be getting worse over here in the UK. And that, of course, proved to be absolutely the case. That's the thing, what most people, I think, forget. This government in the UK, we had a head start, maybe because we're an island nation. we don't get as many people coming in from all over Europe into our country. But basically, we were lagging behind the likes of Spain, Italy, Germany, France, and we had opportunities to slow down the virus. Opportunities, clearly, because of this herd immunity tactic, we did not take. And yeah, I know Dan Hodges is a journalist who is only concerned about defending the Conservative government. But yeah, if he had, and a load of other UK journalists, been a bit more sceptical concerning the government, the likes of Robert Peston, Laura Kuenssberg as well, maybe challenge them a bit more, maybe we wouldn't have seen such a massive amount of deaths that we saw in the UK if the media and the press in this country wasn't just concerned with helping the Tories at every possible opportunity. What do you think, Michael?
No, yeah, I mean, I guess like he was thinking that people were supposed to be saying like that we're going to jump up to being parallel with Italy within the space of 2 weeks, rather than obviously what people are actually saying, which is, like you said, that we basically have effectively a 2-week head start, and therefore we should obviously try to behave in a way that will make sure we don't end up where those countries are. And yeah, obviously, I mean, yeah, you pretty much covered it yourself. Certainly, many of these people seem to be completely reluctant to see the government do anything proactive, even though we could already see how even the what the other countries were doing was not having necessarily the complete desired effect. They thought, oh, I know what will work, let's do even less.
Yeah, and there was no doubt about it that the UK's response was completely awful because of their policy. Take a look at what Dominic Cummings was reported to have said. This is an extract from the Sunday Times, which, again, got leaked about a year ago, as you can see in your screen. Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's senior aide, became convinced that Britain would be better able to resist a lethal second wave of the disease next winter if Whitty's prediction that 60% to 80% of the population became infected was right, and that the UK developed, quote, herd immunity. There's that great phrase again. At a private engagement at the end of February, Cummings outlined the government strategy. Those present say it was herd immunity, protect the economy, and that means some pensioners die. Too bad. And that is, again, just in pure form the Conservative ideology, written in a few words. Protect the economy if people die. Too bad. And of course, the reality was that it wasn't going to be some pensioners or a few people. It was going to be hundreds of thousands of people, as we have seen. I mean, when we got to 100,000 deaths, as you can see on your screen, this was the headline in the Daily Mail. Boris' heartfelt message on day UK reached 100,000 dead. I offer my deepest condolences to everyone who's lost a loved one, fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. I was Prime Minister, I take full responsibility, and in big, bold letters, I am deeply sorry. I mean, this is just pure propaganda. I mean, that's what it is. There's no, like, I think it's necessary to be that crude with this. What is the angle taken here? It's not, wow, the UK has the highest death rate in Europe, 100,000 dead. We've really messed up. There were so many mistakes along the way. It's just the leader, Boris Johnson, saying, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's the message, not what a god-awful job he has done. What a god-awful decision it was to listen to Dominic Cummings, who wanted to pursue a policy of herd immunity, and all the mistakes along the way as well. Basically, Michael, to sum up the UK's situation on COVID a year ago and still today, there have been so many mistakes and little accountability from the government and also the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer. And yeah, it's just an incredibly depressing situation all round.
The issue is that when it comes to accountability, I think it's not just a matter of saying, you're sorry. It's also acknowledging why you made the mistakes you made. Otherwise, it just means nothing. And obviously, in this case, the Conservatives would have to acknowledge the flaws of how they behaved. But obviously, saying you're sorry, but in a manner that effectively doesn't take responsibility because it doesn't acknowledge how you contributed to the situation, is effectively completely meaningless.
Yeah, and that is the UK situation. But now, Michael, we are going to move on to talking about the United States, because they also messed things up quite royally. The thing is, it was a bit different in the United States, because at first the right wing there, of course, were in charge at the time because Trump was president. The idea was basically trying to convince themselves that this COVID thing just wasn't happening. You can see this tweet from Candace Owens here in late February 2020. Let's do facts. 250,000 to 600,000 people a year die of the regular flu worldwide. 2,800 people have died of COVID thus far this year. Now go put on your surgeon's mask while the rest of us ignore this, quote, epidemic. well, they could ignore the epidemic because soon it turned into a pandemic. And of course, the next image is a truly iconic image from Sean Hannity's show, Coronavirus Deaths in the United States, 0. It is in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands right now, of course. And it doesn't look to be slowing down there in that nation right now either. So basically that was the response from the right wing in the United States. Basically just act like this thing isn't a big deal, act like it isn't happening. And that's still incredibly, that narrative still persists to this day. And even some went as far as to say that this whole COVID thing was a conspiracy to take down President Donald Trump because it was happening in an election year. We can't forget that. Here is a clip from Fox News' Trish Regan, who warned that the Democrats were trying to use the coronavirus as another attempt to impeach President Trump. Watch this.
The chorus of hate being leveled at the president is nearing a crescendo as Democrats blame him and only him for a virus that originated halfway around the world. This is yet another attempt to impeach the president. And sadly, it seems they care very little for any of the destruction they are leaving in their wake. Losses in the stock market. All this, unfortunately, just part of the political casualties for them. You know, this is the time to be united, not to be pointing fingers, not to be encouraging hate, and yet what do we see? We see the absolute opposite from the left tonight. Good evening, everyone. I am Trish Regan. The hate is boiling over, many in the liberal media using, and I mean using, coronavirus in an attempt to demonize and destroy the president.
So do you think Trish Regan was right there, Michael?
No, yeah, I mean, obviously it's, that's a classic piece of rhetoric, like the idea of like people need to be coming together and not talking about why we're in this situation and what mistakes were made. But yeah, obviously just the fact that, shock horror, conservatives in America are, crazy and make British conservatives look almost reasonable because, obviously this was not a hoax to, dislodge Trump. And certainly we've seen that now because it's, still an issue while Biden's in charge and one that he's actually working more effectively to solve.
Yeah, and here's the thing. What did she talk about as one of the horrible losses from all this COVID talk? It was the stock market going down. And the thing is, that is, I guess, why I think that the United Kingdom, the United States, regarding their coronavirus response. I remember actually in March last year, the Attorney General of Texas basically came on Tucker Carlson's show and said, yes, he would sacrifice himself for the economy. And I think this is essentially why America and the UK have handled the pandemic so badly. It's this ideology that was dominant while Trump was president and still a bit while Biden is. And also, of course, while the Conservatives are in charge in the UK, you saw it with that Dominic Cummings message, basically protect the economy, is that they don't want to touch the economy, they don't want to hurt the stock market, since that is the most important thing to them. The only way to stop this was to pay people to stay home. That was the only option from day one, and eventually things in the UK kicked into gear with the furlough scheme, but in the United States, obviously, they haven't got anything like that. They have higher unemployment, and, Biden sends out a $1,400 check. Trump did a $2,000 one back at the start of March, but that's nowhere near the level of relief that people in the United States should have received. And I think that, if health isn't your number one priority, and instead it's the economy or finances, then you're going to sacrifice people, you're going to have a hell of a lot of deaths, and that ideology explains why there has been so much death on either side of the Atlantic and why the United Kingdom and the United States have handled the pandemic so badly. What do you say to that, Michael? Yeah,
I think ultimately it is the case that these people, and especially I think also it's not just that they were concerned about the economy. And I'll make this distinction because, I think maybe it's a slightly more interesting take, that I do think you could phrase it in terms of the economy, but I think specifically talking in terms of the stock market, which is of course the zenith of kind of abstracting the economy, so you're not really talking about the material conditions of the average person. I have sympathy for people who talk about how coronavirus has actually had negative effects on the material conditions of the average person. And obviously I can understand somebody saying that there is a point at which safety has to be balanced with the ability of the average person to enjoy their lives. But I think what makes this particularly offensive, I guess, is the fact that these people are talking about the economy and they're contextualizing that in terms of multi-million-dollar companies at the stock market. So I have even less sympathy for them because of that, of course.
But the thing is that, of course, job losses are horrific, and they COVID has affected people's material conditions, which is why I say again, the only way to stop this thing was literally to pay people to stay at home. That's what you had to do. Pay people to stay at home. And you would have, yes, the jobs would have been lost, but people's material conditions wouldn't have been negatively affected that poorly. And a lot of lives could have been saved at the same time. But now, Michael, I think it's time to move on to another aspect of the reaction from Conservatives to the coronavirus, which is, I guess, their insistence on not wanting to wear masks, not wanting to social distance, etc. And I think that phenomenon can be best looked at by showing you all this video of children burning masks in Idaho. You may have seen this video already, but if you haven't, I think you'll enjoy.
Apply! Here, Fire. Here's another mask.
Hey, Fire, are you hungry? The fire was indeed hungry. That's the thing. I'm really interested in why Conservatives just hate masks. I think I've boiled it down to 3 reasons, Michael. The first reason is that basically Conservatives generally, of course, not the kids there, they're being indoctrinated. I'm talking about the wider phenomenon. They're generally quite selfish people. And I think that, they can dress up their ideology with like freedom and liberty. But essentially what it is freedom to not participate in society or to help other people, not sacrifice anything, basically. And that is essentially it. And it's why, even if the sacrifice is so minimal, like just wear a mask, that they are so opposed to it because maybe they don't like it. And if they don't like it, and it could help other people not get it, well, who cares? They're other people. They're not themselves. And another aspect is, I think, they see themselves as, very strong, like, oh, wearing a mask is for fucking pussies or whatever. I think that is probably a phrase that has been uttered so much over the last year. They're not scared of getting the virus. Who cares about it? You should be stronger than that, particularly if you're not someone who's like 65 years old or has a medical condition. And lastly, I think this is probably a pretty big reason, like liberals like doing it, liberals like wearing a mask, and because anything that the liberals do, the Conservatives, particularly in America, must oppose, and so I think that is another reason why they are so anti-mask. I think those 3 factors contribute to seeing the video that you saw just on your screen a few minutes ago. What do you think about that, Michael?
I definitely think the own the libs aspect is possibly the most true and saddest aspect. I think I have 3 reasons too, actually, kind of related but distinct enough. Which is the first one, I think, is that Conservatives hate the idea of kind of being collectively invested in things. I recently watched a video on why American Conservatives hate public healthcare, and one of the suggestions is that they hate the idea that the healthcare of an individual would be wrapped up in the welfare of the whole community, which of course does happen when you have a public healthcare system. And I imagine that's a similar thing here, of just not wanting, and obviously that's a more specific American thing. I think the other aspect is Conservatives have a complete lack of appreciation for the distinction between like government mandates that are based in like logic and sense and other government mandates. Obviously, one of the things that a lot of kind of again, this is very particular to America, have this idea of like more government is bad, less government is good, with no regard to like the actual kind of reasons for what the government is doing and things like that. So of course, even though wearing a mask is completely reasonable, it is more government, Luke, and that makes it bad. And then the final aspect, I think, is possibly the conspiratorial aspect of it being like the government's trying to control people. And I think this one applies as much to the UK as well. I remember there was a speech by I think he's called David Murphy. He's a conspiracy theorist in the UK, and he had a big kind of COVID gathering, and he gave a speech and said, I want every single person to hug the person next to them because you aren't infectious, you aren't diseased, don't believe the government that's telling you not to love your fellow man. So he had this idea that this thing was designed to convince people to reject love and community and things like that. And I think that's just kind of the wider aspect of it, this idea that like the masks are there to try and control the public, and obviously that's a more conspiratorial aspect. But having said that, obviously very early on in the COVID thing, like even before the numbers got big, we were seeing people vandalizing 5G masks because they thought that they were secretly spreading COVID through I don't know what Jewish space laser rays.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, I guess, following on from the Trump QAnon thing, and conservatives generally becoming more conspiratorial over the last few years because of Donald Trump. So the 5G thing, isn't that surprising? But I think all those things are correct. Basically, they don't like at the end of the day, to boil it down to most simple terms, they don't like helping other people, and they are incredibly individualistic. And yeah, that does not work in a pandemic. It's why it is a flawed ideology or a flawed worldview, because then you'll just get more deaths. And yeah, maybe people would accept that. It's like, yeah, okay, I won't, submit to what the government tells me or what the libs want, and I'll die, and I'll be happy for it. But yeah, that is quite death culty. But I guess that is a lot of conservatives, particularly as we've said in America, where the conservative movement over there is particularly extreme. And at the end of the day, Michael, I don't know when we're going to get out of it, but this last year has just made things in our society just worse. And I don't know when things are going to turn around. Do you, Michael? When's the next normal day going to be? Pick that day right now.
7th of May 2022.
Okay, well, we'll see you then, Michael. I'll see you then. I look forward to that date.